Hey, what up guys, Mackenzie here, week 3 of my 12 and 12 challenge. This week I built a recipe box. I'll be honest, this week was a little tough for me because I played with a few new concepts, one being nested forms. That was a little tricky for me to figure out, but I got it working and it's up on the demo application if you want to check it out. In addition to that, I got some image uploading going on, and then I decided to use Haml instead of ERB for our application files. So let's jump in. I'll show you what the app's going to look like, and then we'll go through and build it out. All right, guys, so let me show you what we're going to be building. So here is the recipe box we're going to be building in this tutorial. So you can see on the root of the application, it lists out all the recipes we have. And then if we click on one, on the show page, we have an image, a title, a description, and then multiple ingredients and multiple directions. So we have a recipe model, an ingredients model, and a directions model. And then when we create a new recipe, all three of those are on the same form. So if we add a new ingredient, you can see those get added and removed dynamically. Same with the various steps. And this is done by using Cocoon Gem for the nested forms. As well, we have the ability to sign in and out. We got some flash messages, and then a user can sign up as well. And obviously only a signed in user has the ability to create a new recipe or edit or destroy one. All right, so let's go ahead and get started creating our new application. So I'm gonna close down our server, or the server I just had running. I'm gonna cd into my 12 and 12 directory. All right, let's go ahead and create our new recipe box application. So I'll do Rails new recipe underscore box. And that's gonna generate the new Rails application for us. All right, so now that that is done, let's cd into that directory, cd recipe box. All right, and before we do anything, let's initialize this in Git, and Git add all the files by doing git add dot, then git commit -am. And I'll just say initial commit. Cool. So now that that's done, let's make sure everything was installed correctly by running the Rails server. So if I go to localhost 3000, you can see welcome aboard, writing Ruby on Rails. And if you click on about your application's environment, it will show the version of Ruby and the version of Rails you're using, as well as the database, among other stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to open up a new, let's close down the server, Command C or Control C. And then in a new one, I'm gonna cd into the 12 and 12 directory, and then recipe box, and I'm gonna run the Rails server. I'll keep this one small because you guys really don't need to see that. All right, so in the recipe box, let's open it up in Sublime Text. Before we do anything, we're gonna be using Haml instead of ERB, embedded Ruby, for our application files. So to do that, we need to first install a gem. So let's open up our gem file. And I'm just gonna clean this up a bit, get rid of the unnecessary comments. All right, so I'll just go under JBuilder. If you go to rubygems.org, you can see the latest version of the Haml gem. So I'm just going to copy that and then paste that in there. All right, so I'll close this out, save the gem file, and then back in our terminal, let's run bundle install. All right, and that will go ahead and grab the Hamel gem for you. I already have it installed on my system, so obviously it just makes sure this application is using that. So I'm going to go to our server and restart that so our application recognizes the Hamel gem. Cool. So to get started, let's go ahead and create our recipes. So I'm going to do Rails generate controller recipes. All right, and that created the recipe controller for us. Let's go ahead and open that up, take a look. Awesome. So in addition to our controller, we're going to need some routes. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the routes file under config routes.rb. And then I'm going to add a few lines, resources and recipes. And then in addition to that, we're going to route the recipe, or route the recipes controller index action to the home of our website. So recipes index. All right, so back in our recipes controller, let's go ahead and create the index method or index action. All right, then under our views, we're obviously going to need a view for the index. So let's go ahead and save that or create one. So index.html, and we're going to use the .hamel extension. So let's just write h1. This is the placeholder for the recipes index. So now if we refresh, we should see, there we go. This is a placeholder for the recipes controller index action. All right, so let's go ahead and create the ability to add or create new recipes, as well as show the recipe we just created. So let's make one for show action, def new, and then a def create for now. All right, so I know each of the recipes we're going to need to find the recipe. So I'm going to create a private method to hold that. So I'm going to do private and then def, I'll call this find recipe. And then I'm going to do @recipe equals recipe.find with params of ID. And then, whoops, and that. And then I'm going to create a before action. I'm going to do find recipe. And we only want this only on the show, the edit, the update, and the destroy. So that way we don't have to add it for each of those. And we can use the dry principle, don't repeat yourself, to save some typing and have a bit cleaner code. All right, so under our show, we're going to want to do @recipe, or no, sorry, not under our show. Under our new, we're going to want to do @recipe equals recipe.new. And then under create, we're going to do @recipe equals recipe.new with recipe params. And let's go ahead and create that under our private method. So def recipe params. This way it, our application whitelists the attributes we want to save to our model. So we'll do params.require. We want to require recipe. And then we're going to permit title and the description for now. We'll add the other models as well as the image later. All right, so if we go to /recipe/new, we should get a an error So we get an error, but that's not what I was expecting. You know what? I bet we need to create our model. So let's generate that now. So we'll do Rails generate model, and this is going to be a recipe model. And we're going to have a title as a string, description as text. And then we're going to add a user ID for when we add the users, which is going to be an integer. All right, and let's do rake-db migrate. Let's give this another try. There we go. So now it just says template is missing. Cool. So let's go ahead and create that template. So I'm going to make two different files. One's new.html.yaml, and the other one is going to be a form partial. So underscore form.html.yaml. All right, so in the form, we're going to be using simple form, which actually we need to add to our gem file. So let's go to rubygems.org. Let's search for simple form. Forms made easy. Let's copy the latest to our clipboard, and under YAML, we'll just add the simple form gem. And then let's go ahead and make sure we restart our server. Oh, whoops, we need to run bundle install. All right, and now let's restart our server. Cool. So I'll close out of that. So I'm going to use simple form for, and then we're going to do @recipe, and then HTML, we're going to do multi-part true, and then do F. Then we want to do tab over, do if @recipe has any errors, errors.any question mark. We're going to put this in an errors div, and then wrap the error in a p tag. And then on the next line, drop down, do equals @recipe.errors.count, and then prevented this recipe from saving. What that will do is it will wrap the number of errors prevented this recipe from saving inside a p tag. And with YAML, you can't do that all on one line, unfortunately. All right, so let's add the list out the recipes, and we'll do that in an unordered list. So we're going to do @recipe.errors.fullMessages, and then .each do message. And then for each message, that's going to be an li tag, and we're going to print out the message. All right, then we want to add another div. I'm going to call this panel body, which will be used for Bootstrap when we add it. And then we're going to add f.input and title, and then I'm going to add some input HTML with class of form control. And this is for the Bootstrap as well. I'm just going to copy that so I can use it for f.input description. The cool thing about form or simple form is that we can just do f.input, and then that takes care of the label and the input for us. And then we're also going to do f.button, and this is going to be submit button with a class of button, and then button primary to make it stand out. Then in our new file, we're going to do, let's make an h1 tag and just say new recipe. Under that, we're going to render the form. So render form. Well, let's add a break, and let's add a link to back, and this is going to go to root path. So it's going to take us back home if we don't want to create a new recipe. And then this is going to have the class of button and button default. All right, so we have new. Oh, we need to add a bit more to our recipes create action in the controller. So we're going to do if at recipe.save. We want to redirect to at recipe with the flash message of successfully created new recipe. Cool. And then if that doesn't save, we'll render the new form. All right, so let's go ahead, take a look. Let's refresh this. Awesome. So you can see it renders the form. In the form, we have the title, the description. Then we have title, description, create recipe. Let's go ahead and try to create a new recipe. So I'll say this is my first recipe. And then I'll just create recipe. All right, so you can see in the URL, it takes us to the recipe show page, but that template is missing. So let's go ahead and create that. Call this show.html.haml. All right, for now, let's just list out the title and the description to make sure it works. And then later we'll add the divs for styling. So let's make an H1 and we'll do at recipe dot title, as well as a p tag. Oh, whoops, we want to list both these out. So we're going to do recipe at recipe dot description. So if we refresh this, beautiful. And to make things easy, let's just add a quick link to back home. So we'll do link to and call this back, and then root path. And then we'll have a class, make this btn, and then button, let's make it button default. All right, so that gives us a new recipe, or a link back to the root of our application. All right, so let's take care of that real quick. In our recipe controller, we want to list out all of the recipes. So let's do at recipe equals recipe.all, and let's order this by in descending order. So we'll do order created underscore at, and then descending. All right, so now inside of our index page, let's create a loop so it loops through each of the recipes. So I'm going to do at recipe.each do, and then recipes. So for each recipe, we want to list out, let's do an h2 tag. Whoops. And then I'm just going to do a link to recipe.title. And then it's going to be the recipe path. So let's refresh that. This is my first recipe. And that takes us to that. Awesome. So we have the ability to create a post. Let's add the ability to edit and destroy as well. So back in our recipe controller, let's just under create, let's add a def edit and then def update, and then we'll do a destroy as well, or def destroy end. If I could type, there we go. So in the edit, we don't need to do anything because in the before action, it finds the recipe for us with recipe.findParams ID. So in the update one, we want to add a few lines. So if the recipe.update, and then we want to use recipe params, So if it updates, let's redirect to @recipe. If it doesn't, we'll render the edit form, which we haven't created just yet. So, and then the destroy method, do @recipe. You can see it already finds the recipe we want to destroy. So recipe.destroy, and then after we destroy it, we want to redirect to the root path. So we're just taking them home. And then we'll notice successfully deleted recipe. So just give a message that it deleted successfully. All right, so back in our show page, let's first create a new file under views recipes, and we will call this edit.html.haml. edit.html.haml. And then this one's going to be very simple. It's just going to be h1 edit recipe, and then we're just going to render the form. All right, then back in our show, let's add a link to edit, and this is going to be the edit recipe path. Make sure that's correct. Let's do rake routes to take a look at our routes for our application. So edit recipe is, edit recipe path. That's correct. And then we're going to do a class of btn and btn default. So let's refresh this. If we click edit, all right, it takes us to the edit page with the new stuff. Let's just make sure it works by saying this is my first recipe, but updated. Update. Awesome, that works. Now let's add a destroy link. So link to, we'll just say delete, and then we're going to do recipe path, and then we're going to do method delete, and then the class method delete data confirm, are you sure? And then this will be class of btn default. There may be an error in there. Yeah, I think it's right here. It needs a comma. Yeah, there we go. So let's see if that works. Let's try to delete this. Are you sure? Cool. And then it takes us back to the root path. Awesome. So let's go ahead. Let's go to post/new, or no, recipe/new. And then I'm just going to say another recipe, blah, blah, yum, yum. Create recipe, and then let's go and create a new one, recipes/new. One more, create recipe. All right, cool. So we got the basic functionality of our recipes all done. So next, I want to add the Bootstrap gem so our application doesn't look so absolutely terrible. So let's close out these. I'm just going to open up the gem file. Let's go to rubygems.org and search for Bootstrap-Sass. All right, so we'll get the latest Bootstrap-Sass. I'll just put that under simple form, save, and then bundle. Cool. And then let's restart our server. All right, and if you go to the GitHub page for the Bootstrap-Sass, it will give you some information on what you need to do. first we need to go under App Assets Style Sheets, application.css. Let's rename that to .scss. And then we're going to import bootstrap-sprockets and then @bootstrap. All right, so let's refresh this. All right, you can already see it's looking a bit better. Very cool. All right, so let's add some structure to our application real quick. So let's close this out. I'm gonna leave the CSS file open, and then I'm gonna go to Views, Layout, application.html.erb. I'm gonna rename this to .haml. All right, then since this is a HAML file now, we need to edit and make sure it's not HTML anymore. So I'm gonna make sure it's using the Ruby HAML syntax highlighting. So instead of doc type HTML, do #5 for the HTML5. And then we'll do HTML and then %head and then %title. And we'll call this recipe app. The cool thing about HAML is you don't need to close we don't need any of the closing tags. It's all based off of the indentation, which is very important. For example, if you use 2 spaces here and then a tab somewhere else, and the tab and the spaces are different, then it will throw up an error and complain. So that was a little frustrating when I first figured it out, but or first started playing with it. But once you get used to it, it's a much nicer way to work. So let's add this, add the style sheet tag, and then the JavaScript, let's go, and then the CRF. All right, and to do embedded Ruby, we just do equals that. And then we want to add a body. And then under that, we just want a yield. So let's refresh this, make sure it's all working correctly. Yeah, see? Oh, yeah, duh. Let's get rid of all this. But this was the inconsistent indentation. There we go. Everything's working good now. So let's add some structure to our application. So first I'm going to add a navbar. So I'm going to do %nav.navbar and then .navbar default. And this is all Bootstrap styling, by the way. And then we're going to put this inside of a container. And then for our logo, navbar brand. And we're going to do a link to, it's going to be called recipe box. And then it's just going to go to, root path. All right. And then let's also add a UL for our navigation. So UL and then LI equals, we'll add a link to new recipe. And then this is going to be the new recipe path. Let's add a class to our UL. We'll call this .nav.navbar, .navbar.nav, and then .navbar right. So it floats over to the right. And then li equals link to, link to, and then we're going to add a sign out button, and then we'll just make this the root path now. There we go. It's all looking good now. All right, so under our navigation, we want to add a container for the main content. And then we're going to add a flash message, flash.each do, say name message, And then we're going to print out a content tag, which is going to be a div with the message and a class of alert. All right, and then we will just tab over the yield to make sure it's inside the container. Refresh this. Beautiful. Now we got our success message and our recipes listing out. Let's go ahead and add images to the recipes. All right, to do that, we are going to use Ruby Gems, the paperclip gem. All right, so let's copy that, add that to our gem file. Under simple form, we'll add gem paperclip 4.2.0. Save that, but let's go to the home page and look at the requirements. So you first need to install ImageMagick for this to work correctly. I've already done that. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the quick start section. All right, we want to add this has attached file and then validates attachment to our recipes model. So under model recipe, let's go ahead and add that. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. All right, and I'm going to change has attached file. This is for avatar on a user in their example. I'm just going to change that to image. And then styles, medium, let's say 400 by 400. And I'm going to change this to pound. That way it crops the image to exactly 400 by 400 pixels. And I'm just going to take this thumb out because we're not going to use a thumbnail image in this tutorial. And then you also need to validate the content type. So I'm just going to copy that. And this is just to make sure what they're uploading is actually an image. So we'll change avatar to image. All right, and let's change these to the new one instead of the hash rocket. Let's do content type. Cool. All right, so next we need to add a migration. So it says you can do that by, you can do it manually, or you can run Rails generate paperclip. So let's do that. So I'm going to do Rails generate paperclip. And then in their example, they use user avatar. We're going to do recipe image. All right, let's run that. And that created the migration for us. We can go ahead and take a look at it. And that just creates everything that is, you can see add attachment images to recipes. And then let's migrate our database, rakedb migrate. All right, so next we need to add this to our form. So we'll close out of that. Under recipes form, let's just copy this and we'll paste that and change this to image and save that. And then under our recipes controller, right here, we need to add that to the recipe params. So now let's go back. Let's try restarting our server real quick. Yep, that was the issue. All right. There, now you can see the new recipe form has an option for a image. So let's create a recipe and see if this works. So let's say this recipe has an image, blah, blah. Right, and I've just grabbed a few images of food off the internet. So I'm just gonna drag one on there and then we'll hit create recipe. All right, so it successfully created the recipe, but it doesn't show up. So let's edit our show page. So what we want to do, let's just add it to the top. We're going to do image tag at recipe.image.url, and we want the medium. And then we'll add a class of recipe image. And refresh this. Very cool. And then we want to add that to our index as well. So for each recipe, we want to have the H2, but also we want the image tag. And then this is going to be a link as well. So we'll do link to recipe, and then this is going to be a block. So link to recipe, and then we're going to do image tag, recipe.image.url : medium. Refresh that. So this shows up as broken. I'm just going to go ahead and delete these. Delete this one as well. All right, let's create a new recipe. Let's just drag the image to the file upload. I'll just say cookie description. All right, create recipe. Made one for us. Let's go back to the home. Let's say another one. Fajitas. Add a description. Create recipe. Very cool. So this is working well. It doesn't look very well. So let's add some structure to our index page. So what we want is each one to be, we want 3 per column. So to do this with Bootstrap, we need to use the each slice method. So we're going to do recipe.each slice, and then we want it to slice every 3, and then we're going to change this to recipes. All right, I'm just going to get rid of all this and we'll redo it. So recipes, and then each one is going to be in a row. And then for each row, we're going to do recipes.each do recipe to grab the actual recipe. And then each one of those is going to be in a column md-4, which is Bootstrap. And then .recipe. And then we're going to do an image wrapper. And then we're going to do the link to recipe do. We're going to do an image tag. We're going to do recipe.image.url, and this is going to be a medium. Cool. And then on the same line as the image wrapper, we'll do an H2, and then we're going to print out link to tag, and this is going to be recipe.title, comma, and then it's going to go to recipe path. All right, so let's refresh this. So you can see each one is showing up, and you can see if we create a new one, let's just say, grab the image, we'll say pasta, pasta, add a little description. All right, so that breaks to a new row. So if you inspect the source, you can see that the top 3 are in a row, and then the bottom one is in its own row, which is exactly what we want. All right, so that doesn't look very good just yet. So what I'm going to do now is copy and paste some styles that I did to overwrite the Bootstrap and make it look a little nicer. So under app style sheets application.css, I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm not really going to go through it. Well, I'll run through it very quickly, but we won't spend much time on it. So let's paste that. So this is defining a color as a variable, and then we're setting the background color to like a light blue grayish color, adding some padding to the main content, styling the alert, the logo, and then all right, let's change this to .scss so you can see the syntax highlighting. All right, and then we have each recipe is going to have background of white, a little border radius, some margin, and then a box shadow. And then the reason we wrap the image around an image wrapper is because when we hover over the image, it's going to scale up just a little bit. And then this is all for the index show page to style it. All right, so let's save that, refresh. Perfect. So if you see when we hover over it, it grows a little bit. If we didn't have the image wrapper, it would, the actual image would grow and it wouldn't get cut off. So it wouldn't have the same effect. Everything's looking pretty good. All right, so next we need to add the ability to have ingredients and recipes for each, or ingredients and directions for each one of our recipes. So let's do that now. Let's close out of these, open up our gem file. So the way we're going to do this is by using a gem called Cocoon. And Cocoon makes it easy to have nested forms using jQuery. So it does all the bulk of the work for us, which is pretty awesome. So let's install or grab the latest from rubygems.org. Then we'll go to the Cocoon GitHub page. So we want to, so it says inside your gem file, add gem cocoon. We did that. And then in our application, well, first let's run a bundle. Bundle install. All right, and then we will restart our server. So now it says in your application.js file, you want to require Cocoon. So let's do that. In the app assets JavaScript application.js, I'm just going to add that under jQuery. All right, save that. And then it gives you some basic usage for the gem. So first we need to create a model for our ingredients and then a model for the directions. So let's go ahead and create those. Rails, generate model, ingredient, and then each ingredient is just going to have a name of the ingredient, and that's going to be a string, and then it's going to belong to a recipe. So recipe : belongs to. All right, then we'll generate another one, Rails G model, and then direction. And then each direction is going to have multiple steps, and the step is just going to be a text. And then it's going to belong to a recipe as well. All right, so if we go under, let's close these so you can actually see what I'm doing. All right, under app models, direction.rb, direction belongs to recipe, ingredients belong to recipe. All right, and then it created the migration for us, or the tables in the database. So we need to migrate our database, rake db migrate. All right, and it created the ingredients table and the directions table. Awesome. Then under recipes, recipe model, we need to do a few things. All right, so first we need to make sure a recipe has many ingredients and has many directions. So we're going to do a recipe has many ingredients and then has many directions. All right, then you can see we also need to add accepts nested attributes for. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. All right, so what this is doing is accepts nested attributes for ingredients. It's rejecting if So if we create a new ingredient but don't fill anything in, it's not going to save a blank ingredient, which is exactly what we want. All right, and while we're in here, I'm going to add a validation to this model. So I'm going to do validates title, description, and image, and then I'm going to do presence true, just to make sure it doesn't save and it throws up some errors if we try to save it without a title and a description or an image. All right, so let's save that. And then we need to add the attributes to our strong parameters inside of our controller. So app controllers, recipes controller. All right, this is going to be a little different. We're going to do, you can see we need to add the attributes for the ingredients and then the attributes for the directions as well. So what we'll do is after image, I'm just going to do ingredients, attributes, colon, and then we're going to get an ID, a name, and then we need to add underscore destroy so that we are able to destroy them. And then get out of that. And then we'll do directions or attributes. And then ID, and then each one has a step, and then we need destroy as well, underscore destroy. All right, so this should be working. Let's go ahead and add that to our form. Let's see. So under views, recipes, form, let's do a row and then column MD6, H3 ingredients. And then we're going to wrap this in an ingredients div or a div with the ID of ingredients. Then f.simple fields for ingredients, do ingredient. Then we're going to render ingredients fields, which we haven't created just yet. Then f ingredient. And you can see the Cocoon documentation has examples for Formtastic, simple form, which is what we're using, and then the standard Rails forms. All right, and then below that, we want to add links. And then we're going to do link _to add association. And then we're going to say add ingredient, F, and then colon ingredients. And then we're going to add a class of btn default, and then an add button class. All right, then we need to create that partial we'll save this as underscore ingredients underscore fields .haml or .html .haml. All right, so in here we want to do form inline, which is Bootstrap, as well as a clear fix, Bootstrap as well, and then .nested fields, and then this is part of the Cocoon Gem, so make sure you copy this exactly. And then f.input, we're gonna have name, and then input HTML with the class of form input and then form control. And then we're also going to do link to remove association, remove f class of form button, btn prime or default. So let's refresh that. Hopefully everything works. So hopefully this works and we can add a ingredient. Cool. So let's go ahead and add the form for the, or another one for our directions. So dot column MD6, and then we're going to do another H3, and then this is going to be called directions. Directions div f.simple fields for directions do direction. And then we're going to render the directions or direction fields, then f direction, and then dot links. We're going to do another link to add association. And add step f colon directions. And then I'm just going to copy and paste the class. All right, now let's go ahead and create a new file for that partial. And this is going to be called direction fields.html.haml. And then instead of typing all that out, I'll just copy and paste. Again, it's .form inline, .clearfix, .nested fields. And then this adds a input for us with the form input and form control class, and then a link to remove association. So let's refresh this. Cool. We have the ability to add and remove dynamically the different directions. Let's try to create a new one and see if it saves for us. So I'll just add the mac and cheese picture again. Call this mac and cheese, blah, blah. Add ingredients, mac, another one, and cheese. And then steps, make mac and cheese, another step, eat. Create recipe. All right, well, we didn't get any errors, but it's not showing up. So let's add that to our show file. All right, so this needs quite a bit of work. I'm gonna go ahead and add the structure now. Since we already have the images and we have the ingredients and description. So we're gonna add a main content div that wraps around everything. And then the top section is gonna be recipe top div or ID with .row, and then column MD-4, and this is going to hold the image. So we're going to do an image tag, then at recipe.image.url medium, and then we're going to do class of a recipe image. And then we're going to do another column, MD-8. And then this is going to have the ID of recipe info. Then we'll do a H1, and then at recipe.title. Then we're going to do p.description, and then print out recipe.description. All right, then we'll go back here. We'll add another one for another row for the ingredients and directions. So we'll do column MD-6. So it takes up half of the container. And then this is going to be inside ingredients div or ID ingredients. And then h2 with ingredients. And then it's going to be in a UL. And then we're going to loop through all the recipes. So at recipe dot ingredients dot each do, and then ingredient. And then for each one, it's going to be an li tag. We're going to print it out, ingredient dot name. Then another one, column md-6. This is going to be directions. Then I'll do another h2. Whoops, call that directions, ul. Then we're going to loop through all of the directions. So at recipe dot directions dot each do direction. And then this is going to be an li printed out direction dot step. All right, and then below that, we're going to add another row. And then this is going to be column 12 or MD12. So it takes up the full width. And then we're going to add a link to, let's just copy these. And that should be all we need. So let's save that. So now we should have all of this styled and the ingredients and directions printed out. Refresh that. So that's looking good. Ingredients. Oh, the div is ingredients and not ingredient. There we go. So now it lists out the ingredients for us. It's all styled nicely. Got the title, description, the image. Beautiful. So these obviously don't have any in it. So let's try to add some to those. All right, so we'll say, I'm just gonna type it real quick. Add some steps. Update. So it's asking for the image again. Well, I'm going to go ahead and delete these because they don't have ingredients. No one has one. Let's delete this as well. All right. So we have our recipe model working, and then the image uploading working, as well as the ingredients and directions in the nested forms through the Cocoon Gem. So everything's looking pretty good. Oh, you know what? I just noticed it says recipe instead of new recipe. So that's gonna bug me, so I'm gonna change that real quick. New recipe. All right. So last but not least, let's add users to this. So let's go to rubygems.org. Let's search for the Devise Gem. All right, I'm just going to copy this and then we'll go to the GitHub page. So under the Getting Started section, let's close out all of these. And inside of our gem file, let's add Devise. And then we will run bundle install. Actually, let's do git s. We've done quite a bit. So before we add users, let's do git add dot git commit. There we go. Git commit -am. Let's see, what all have we done? We did added recipes with ingredients and images or directions. In nested form. All right, so if we do get status again, all right, nothing to commit. Sweet. So do bundle so that our application uses the Devise Gem. Let's go ahead and restart our server as well. All right, and we'll just go through the Devise getting started documentation. So we need to generate the Devise, or run the Devise generator. So let's go ahead and do that. Rails G Devise install. And then it gives us some stuff to take care of. So you have to do it manually if you haven't already. Ensure you have defined default URL in your environments file. We have not done that yet, so I'll copy this, close out of that. Let's close up these so it's a bit nicer looking. All right, so under config environments development.rb, at the bottom, I'm just gonna make a comment, needed for Devise, and then paste that in. Then we need to ensure our we have defined a default root URL, which we have under root recipes : index. We've already added the flash messages in the app views layouts application.html.er or .haml. We have the flash message. All right, we're not going to be deploying to Heroku in this tutorial, so I'm just going to skip step 4, but I am going to tweak the views a bit, so I am going to run Rails G Devise views. And you can see that added the Devise, all the Devise views under app views. Perfect. So now it says we must run the generator to create a model for our users. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do Rails generate Devise, make sure that's what it says. Yeah, Devise model. And in this case, it's going to be Devise user. Cool. So let's make sure there's an association between, you can see in our routes there, Devise for users was added for us. All right, so in our models, let's open up recipes and then user. So a user has many recipes. And then a recipe, let's just add this up here, belongs to user. So if we go into our Rails console now, let's do @recipe equals recipe.last. So that grabs the last recipe for us. It has a blank user ID. So let's fix that by opening up our controller, recipes controller, and we're gonna tweak the way we create a recipe. So instead of doing recipe.new, I'm going to do current user. Actually, I'm going to have myself. Let's go ahead and let's restart our server. Oh, pending migration. So let's run rake db migrate. Refresh again. There we go. So now if we go to /user/signup, it doesn't look too great, but we have the ability to sign up now. So I'm going to create a user for myself. Hey@mckinseychild.me. And then password, we're just going to do password, and then sign up. And then that routes us back to the root of our application. So now in our Rails console, we want to do @post or @recipe equals recipe.last. So again, the user ID is nil. So let's tweak the way this is building. So we're going to do current user.recipes.build, and then under create, we're going to do current user.recipes.build with the recipes param. What recipe params? So if we do recipe.new, let's do @recipe in our console equals recipe.new. So you can see everything is nil. I believe if we do @recipe equals current user.recipes.build, undefined local variable. Let's try to create a new recipe real quick. Another recipe. See, I'm going to add an image. Ah, crap. Add that to the, let's add ingredients real quick and steps. Create recipe. All right, let's see if that worked correctly. I will do @recipe equals recipe.last. All right, there we go. You can see the user ID is 1, which means it's creating a new recipe and assigning it to the current user, which is perfect. So now in our show page, we can do reviews, recipes, show. Let's add another one, another p tag. And we'll do @recipe dot, we'll do a p tag, drop to the next line, submitted by, and then print out @recipe.user.email. Refresh that. Awesome, submitted by hey@mckinseychild.me. We could add a name field to our users, but I'm not going to do that in this application. Undefined method email. Oh, okay. So that error came up because this does not have a user assigned to it. So what I'm going to do in our console, I'm going to do @recipe. I'm just going to assign the first user to those posts. So I'm going to do @user equals user.first. Right, then @recipe equals recipe.first. All right, and the user ID is nil, and then I'm going to do @recipe.user equals @user. All right, and then @recipe.save, and then I'll do that again. @recipe equals recipe.find. I think I can do find 2, and that should find the second one. Okay, so the first one, which is /5, now has a user assigned to it, but the middle one is recipes-8. So I believe, let's try that again, but instead of 2, we'll do 8. There we go. Now we'll do @recipe equals, or recipe.user equals @user, and then @recipe.save. All right, so that's all working now. Very cool. And then from here on out, every recipe will automatically get a user, the user who creates it, assigned to it. All right, so let's just do a few last things. In our recipe controller, we want to make sure to authenticate it. So let's add a before action. Before action, authenticate _ user. And then we want to authenticate everything except the index and the show page. So that way, let's go in an incognito window, localhost, hit new recipe. Awesome, we get it forwarded to the sign in page. Perfect. Then let's make sure the new recipe links and the sign out and the edit and delete only show up if a user is signed in. So let's start with the application .haml file. All right, and we're going to change this. So we're going to do if user signed in. We're going to have it show new recipe and sign out. And then else I'm going to, let's just copy this. We're going to do li to link to sign up. And then we're going to do new user registration path. And then I'll just copy that and then sign in. And then new user, and then registration is going to be session path. All right, so let's refresh. That's looking good. Let's go incognito localhost. All right, and now we got the sign up and sign in links. Perfect. And then we don't want to show the edit or destroy. So in our show page, let's add a if statement here. If user signed in, show these. All right, and then incognito. Perfect. They don't show up. Now, oh yeah, we need to link up the sign out button. So to do that, we're going to not link to root path. We're going to link to destroy user session path with the method delete. All right, so let's try signing out. Perfect. Signs us out successfully, sends us a message, sign back in. All right, and the last thing we need to do, because it looks awful, is the sign up and sign in page. So let's go ahead and style those real quick. All right, so under Devise, let's do Devise sessions new. So the sign in page, let's see, we're gonna want to, I'm not gonna change this to .haml. I'm just gonna add a row and then a column, MD6, and then another one, column MD offset 3. So we have our column centered in the middle. And then I'm just going to copy all of this stuff. And let's push it over. All right, so simple form. Let's see, what we want to do is add, let's go into recipes form, and add the input HTML form control. So let's add those to these. Refresh. unexpected. Let's try adding it before the if. There we go. All right, and then finally we want to add btn and then btn primary. Refresh that. Oh, okay. Just add a comma. There we go. Let's see, I styled this. Whoops, no. So the button style is not showing up for some reason. Oh, okay. So this doesn't need the input HTML like the other ones do. So if I do that, there we go. All right, and I'm just gonna add a BR tag at the bottom to give some space between the links and the sign up button. Cool. Now the sign up is just as bad. So let's go to registration new.html.erb. All right. And again, let's add a row div, then column MD-6, another one, column MD offset 3. Cool, and then we'll just copy and paste these, tab it over, and then let's grab the input HTML form control class, and we'll add that to these 3. Then under here, let's add another class, btn, and then btn primary. And then again, let's add a BR tag. Let's add another one right here as well. Very cool. So now our sign up button, or our sign up form and our sign in are looking good. Let's go ahead and sign in. Hey at mckinseychild.me, password is password. All right, so I think everything is looking good. We have the ability to create a new recipe with dynamic ingredients and directions, 2 models under a 3rd model for the recipe. And we're doing that with the nested forms with the Cocoon Gem. And we're able to add images with the paperclip gem. All right, very cool. I think we're finished. Let's go ahead and commit this to Git real quick. Let's do git status. All right, git add dot, and we'll do git commit -am, add users, and finish styles. Cool, guys, we're all finished building our app. I'd love to hear what you think of it, so reach out to me on Twitter. It's at McKinseyChild, or if you'd like to follow along for more, visit my blog or sign up for my newsletter on my website. It's mckinseychild.me. All right, see you guys next week.